The velocity was off. That distinct irregularity gripped Corrin's focus prior to any alternate metric. Neither the primary tracking data, nor the mechanical threat escalation alert, nor the point of departure tracking straight from Sector 4 Alpha deep inside the scorched remnants of the outer frontier settlements mattered initially. Those variables registered as secondary, tertiary, and quaternary background signals. Only following a second comprehensive validation of his equipment did he permit panic to take root. Corrin represented an engineering specialist who cross-checked every single calculation. It was a discipline maintained throughout 29 years of active duty. Yet, 0% of that rigid thoroughness had equipped him for a deviation this severe. Automated projectile Omicron had exited the launch tube scaling, precisely 740 kilograms. The device currently hurtling toward the battle group registered 815. He initialized a third assessment. The display stubbornly indicated 815. Omicron constituted an atmospheric combustion kinetic asset sent specifically to reduce the frontier's industrial centers to irradiated dust. It was designed to serve as an unanswerable definitive opening blow. That had proved to be their initial oversight. The trajectory introduced the subsequent emergency. Omicron was not drifting through the void like celestial debris. It was not caught within a planetary gravitational pocket. It was consuming propellant. It was maneuvering. It was tracking toward the precise, dead center structural plate of the capital, Dreadnought Vanguard. It maintained a degree of terminal steering logic that necessitated an exceptionally sophisticated, active computerized brain, which Omicron entirely lacked at deployment, because Omicron was intentionally engineered to function as an unguided, uninterceptable mass of destructive kinetic energy. You launched it, it collided, and the target vanished. There existed no internal software architecture to hijack. Concurrently, some entity had integrated a high-precision navigational array onto an asset, purposefully structured to prevent such an intervention. Corrin accessed the weapon's blueprint schematics, a document he had drafted almost exclusively himself. He navigated directly to Section 4, Clause 12E, inspecting the technical description. He had previously received commendations for composing. Any external interference with the primary magnetic containment housing will induce an instantaneous, localized fusion breakdown via a network of hardwired fiber optic links. This safety layout runs through isolated analog switches, possesses zero data interface, and remains impossible to circumvent under any conditions. He had invested 3 years refining that specific failsafe. He re-examined his own text. He monitored the live tracking data. He reread the clause. They had engineered a weapon the adversary was supposed to find physically impossible to neutralize. That had proved to be their second oversight. The deep space spectral telemetry concluded 14 minutes later. Corrin scrutinized the chemical breakdowns twice over before disregarding standard protocol to establish a direct link with Fleet Commander Vance Sr. No familial relationship, simply a shared tribal designation. Across nearly 3 decades of delivering combat, evaluations to high-ranking military leadership, Corrin had followed a strict personal mandate. You never present a paradigm-shattering anomaly until you are absolutely certain. The flaw rests with natural laws, not your own sensors. He was certain. He authorized the priority channel. The supplementary 75 kilograms of matter were attached across 5 separate locations on the weapon's outer skeleton. 3 of those groupings were instantly identified by the ship's database. They comprised the thruster components and processing units harvested from an Aegis-class reconnaissance fighter, a scouting craft, from the forward detachment that had vanished during the initial orbital descent. The settlers had not merely downed it, they had stripped it to the bone for hardware. That was exceptionally alarming. The sort of strategic development Corrin would typically classify as a Tier 2 hazard, highly problematic, necessitating immediate tactical adjustment, but fundamentally remaining within the boundaries of conventional conflict. The remaining 2 groupings did not match. Tier 2, the elemental breakdown identified dense tungsten plating, ultra-high capacity electromagnetic coils, and a pressurized ionization chamber. He designated it as a makeshift defensive barrier for approximately 40 seconds before deleting the log entry. It was not a barrier. According to every metric available to his deep mastery of high-energy mechanics, and he possessed multiple advanced scientific credentials from the premier academies, it represented a secondary, highly unstable compression stage, utilizing an energy amplification concept he had never encountered before. Not in 29 years of active investigation. Not in any restricted black budget project. He held the classification clearance to examine. The settlers had not simply returned the weapon. They had improved it. The commander reviewed the completed data packet while positioned at his command station. He checked it twice. He was a veteran of 3 merciless planetary pacifications, possessing a weathered, expressionless visage designed for the exclusive objective of projecting complete serenity under duress. That serenity was entirely absent now. What is the destructive increase? The commander demanded, his tone hollow. I cannot calculate it, Corin answered. The amplification method remains entirely alien. I cannot execute a predictive simulation without grasping the underlying physics. And I do not grasp the physics. The commander observed the tactical display. The countdown indicated 4 hours, 11 minutes. Can our defense grid neutralize it? We can detonate the external framework. Whether that action triggers the secondary stage immediately adjacent to our hulls, given what these metrics imply, I honestly do not know. Dead air filled the deck. This marked the second instance during a single rotation that Corin had spoken the words, I do not know. It was 2 more times than he had voiced them during the entire previous standard year. Sir, an incoming signal has bypassed our firewalls, the communications specialist declared, her expression tense. It is radiating from the payload itself. It is overpowering every frequency across the collective fleet. They have appended an unencrypted data ledger. Monitor the transmission. Keep the link established. No asset disappears into the dark. Subsequently, the incoming object transmitted a solitary compressed archive. Corin opened it immediately. As the principal technical analyst, it was his obligation. He executed his duties. The archive contained 2 elements. The first was a video chronicle. 47-hour duration. She never seemed to sleep. She consumed 2 synthetic food bars at the workspace without ever averting her gaze from the exposed interior of the Omicron projectile. She spent 6 uninterrupted hours manipulating the analog failsafe, the identical architecture Corin had constructed to be entirely immune to tampering. She operated with the steady, methodical accuracy of an expert artisan, resolving an interesting problem rather than a combatant handling a volatile explosive. At the conclusion of the 6th hour, the woman shifted back from the frame, stared directly into the capturing lens, and spoke. The translation system evaluated the linguistic nuances before generating 7 words. Excellent. Now we can begin the modifications. Corin replayed that particular segment 4 times. He analyzed the woman's features during each cycle. There was 0 showmanship in her posture, no arrogant posturing. She was simply stating an undeniable reality regarding her circumstances, the same way one mentions the ambient illumination of a sector. Then she bent back over the open weapon and continued working. The second element of the file was an unformatted text entry. It contained 12 words composed in the perfect, formal dialect of the hegemony's homeworld. The phrasing was immaculate. The grammar was flawless. This, in its own quiet fashion, demonstrated a terrifying level of capability. We preserved the blueprints. Return here, and we will demonstrate their application. Corin read the phrasing once. He did not require a second inspection. Its meaning was instantly, perfectly apparent, and reviewing the passage a second time would not adjust the reality of their position. The blueprints. The frontier inhabitants had archived the entire conversion process. They could disseminate the data. They could copy the enhancements. They could mass produce them. And they had just occupied the previous 2 days demonstrating that bypassing the hegemony's pinnacle, military technology was not even the challenging portion of their schedule. He redirected his gaze to the primary combat monitor. 3 hours, 52 minutes until impact. His thoughts drifted back to the silver-haired mechanic. the patch of industrial grease on her forehead during the 11th hour of the recording, the cold nourishment consumed over live circuitry, the 6 hours spent systematically dissolving his life's crowning achievement, the casual, matter-of-fact declaration to the camera before immediately returning to manual labor, as though an impossible technological breakthrough was merely an item checked off on a lengthy task list, and there remained simply another objective awaiting her focus. Corin had spent 29 years operating as that identical individual in every environment he entered, the specialist who untangled the impossible equation and transitioned smoothly to the subsequent problem. He understood precisely what that psychological state felt like from within. Now for the initial instance in his existence, he was viewing it from the outside. The commander spoke, his voice piercing the quiet of the command deck. He was requesting a strategic guidance, a definitive path forward. Corin stood as the definitive technical voice on this ship. This decision rested with him. Corin reflected on Section 4, Clause 12, the elegant, unbreachable architecture he had been so proud of developing. Establish a signal back to their point of origin, Corin stated quietly. What are our instructions, sir? The communications officer inquired. Corin evaluated multiple tactical alternatives in his thoughts. He dismissed all of them. In the end, there existed only a solitary declaration that matched the empirical data, and Corin had spent his entire career adhering strictly to the data. Advise them, Corin said, that we are prepared to negotiate terms of withdrawal